Well, if you pay attention to the bylines in the Tribune Review, and that's the name right above the story, you'll recognize a new one in the Trib HS section, and that's of Andrew Erickson, who joins me now. This is his first byline as a full-time writer for the Trib. He started this week, but not his first byline with the Trib. He was an intern in 2014. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Trib and to the Kevin Gorman Show here, Andrew. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
What's it been like for you to come back to the Trib? You were an intern in the summer of 2014. That was the summer after your junior year at UCLA. And a lot of people are going to say, UCLA guy coming to Pittsburgh in the middle of the winter, what's he, crazy? You grew up in Michigan. Right. I know you've moved around quite a bit, but you end up in California and finished 4 years at UCLA, where the editor of the Daily Bruin. I don't want to steal all your thunder here, but we can talk a little bit about some of the stuff you did.
Right.
But I kind of want to have a chance to put a face with the name and with that byline so that people understand when the Trib sends its force of high school writers out there, here's one of our main guys now. But Andrew, what was it like for you to kind of get a chance to come back to the Trib after being an intern here?
Sure. Well, when I first came here, it was kind of on a whim. I was just looking at papers to apply to, and I knew the Trib had an internship program, and really got to Pittsburgh in that summer. Got to really like the city. Got to know the people. Really great sports town. A lot to do here, and when I had the opportunity to come back, I was really excited. And it is the dead of winter. I brought the cold with me. I think it was 18 degrees my second day here, but now we got a heat wave. It's like 37 today, so I can't complain. But it's really nice to be back and see some familiar faces at the Trib.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. We had talked. I think I was driving to where was I? I was driving to Altoona for the state semifinals. The last time I'd spoken with you before you got hired, I was driving up to see Central Catholic play against Cumberland Valley in the Piola Quad A state semifinal game, and we spoke. And I missed my exit while we were talking. I had to turn around. Thankfully,
sorry for that.
I was plenty early, which isn't always my MO, But the nice thing, you have the experience here, but you also got to go back. You've covered UCLA football. Right. Did you cover basketball as well?
I did, yeah.
And you got to be the editor of the Daily Bruin. Right. That's a great experience. From speaking to someone who worked at the Daily Collegian at Penn State University.
You covered a national championship team, right?
No, I didn't get to cover. I covered an undefeated team that won the Rose Bowl. Okay. Had two Heisman Trophy finalists. Right. But no, they didn't get to win the national championship, and that's really what brought the BCS into fruition, because Joe Paterno got snubbed, despite having his, I think at the time it was like his, I don't know if it was sixth undefeated team, but he had an undefeated team that didn't win the national championship, which he'd had multiple teams like that. So, it was kind of, they chose one legend, Tom Osborne at Nebraska, over another, Joe Paterno. And to this day, I'll swear that Penn State team was far superior to the Nebraska team, although the Nebraska teams that came years after that with Tommy Frazier were among the best I've ever seen. So it would have been nice to have seen number one face number two instead of number one play number three and number two play an Oregon team that was not nearly the Oregon that we're familiar with now. That was when they were just becoming a power and they had won the Pac-10 for the first time in a long time. But you got some experience with that. I mean, you got to cover some baseball. Did you cover UCLA baseball at all?
I never covered UCLA baseball. The first time I met Garrett Cole actually was at PNC Park.
Oh, wow.
So we talked about UCLA and kind of our experiences there, and knowing Savage, the baseball coach there. But no, I actually never interviewed him at Jackie Robinson Stadium. Yeah. So that was my first time was in Pittsburgh.
But that's going to be pretty wild. I mean, having been out there, knowing a little bit about. I haven't been to the UCLA campus, but I've been to the Rose Bowl. I've been to different parts of California. I can really appreciate the experience that you went through, even though if it's more of a appreciating from a distance.
Right.
But you also got a chance last summer to work for MLB.com and cover the Seattle Mariners. So you got a chance to experience the Pacific Northwest. Right. Which you live in. Your family's in Sacramento.
They're in Sacramento. Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you consider Sacramento the Pacific Northwest? Or
no,
is
more Northern California.
Northern California.
Yeah.
But that's a great experience too. I mean, I love it out there.
Yeah. It was. It was a beautiful summer. I think they used the roof at Safeco Field a record low number of times. So they had the retractable roof for rain, obviously, and I guess it's supposed to be a rainy summer this next summer, but really beautiful summer there. I actually covered Lloyd McClendon, who's a Pittsburgh guy. Yeah. So, a lot of familiar faces there, but, seeing guys like Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano kind of go about their business, even the slow start they got off to, it was just interesting kind of, being around that clubhouse and seeing some of those big names.
Yeah, and I'm guessing for your sake, we're hoping that you get a chance to cover some baseball here as well at the Tribune Review, especially with Bill West, who was the number 3, part of our beat writer staff. He's moved on to be part of the Penguin staff now, the staff that covers the Penguins. So there's an opportunity there for you. What did you know about Lloyd McClendon? What was the reputation? What was the most... The biggest part of his reputation that you knew before you got to cover him, being that you're 22 years old. I mean, I'm 42 years old. We got a lot of difference in what we remember about Lloyd McClendon. But what was the thing that you knew about him before you ever met him?
Well, I knew he was kind of a throwback baseball guy. I knew he didn't necessarily reject things like analytics, but I knew that he wasn't necessarily 100% into him. Not necessarily like a Clint Hurdle guy who was really into shifts. He'd shift every now and again, but really wasn't kind of the one guy that embraced that. I actually knew him mostly from his time with the Tigers. I knew, a lot of people credit him with, a lot of big seasons for Miguel Cabrera. It was actually just over the course of the summer interesting to hear his stories about Miguel Cabrera. You ask him about what scouting does for a player, he would always say, well, Miguel Cabrera would sometimes fall asleep in scouting meetings, would wake up and ask, does the guy throw a split? And he was the greatest hitter ever. So that was